Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. We are back in the saddle once again, and I have with me Dave Steinborn from Lakeshore Comics, and potentially we might have a straggler coming in, Eiler, who also worked on the book, but he is in the Philippines. And they actually have a very cool manga that's out there, and I like the title. I'm a big Iseki fan or Isaki fan. I'm not exactly sure how to say it. It's kind of got that feel to it, and it's called How to Build an Army. It's currently on Kickstarter. So I figured before we really dive into the book and talk about the book, what is the basic premise of the book for those who are hearing about it for the first time?
So, slight sidetrack, and I'll come back to that. So Eiler, the one that's supposed to be here with us, he's in the Philippines, and he just messaged me back. He said, "I'll try. Power lines are down. They're trying to fix it. Dang it, really bad timing." So, this book is being put out by Lakeshore Comics, and that's my thing. But Eiler actually wrote and drew everything on this one, so I will give it my best go. I kind of leave that up to him generally. So
for those who don't know what this is, I mean, obviously you have an idea what the book is.
oh yeah, I do. It's just I wasn't prepared for describing it because Eiler was here, and then as soon as we went live, right before we went live, he dropped off. So
he's testing you. He's making sure that his publisher knows what's going on.
Exactly. So I'll start with really quick. We launched Broken Trident on Kickstarter successfully in March of 2022, or it finished in March, started in February. And that's a story about an underwater sea elf. The race that we made up for them is called the Natetian. His underwater city gets destroyed, his hometown, and the rest of that series is going to be him trying to figure out who and why and everything. And so then our artist from that comic, Broken Trident, he already had produced this manga called How to Build an Army, and it was only in the Philippines, very limited release. And so then he came to us and said, "Hey, because we were kind of behind on Broken Trident, he said, "Hey, we can launch this How to Build an Army on Kickstarter for now." And so we said, "Sure." And so we read it, and we really enjoyed the book, and it is very fitting with Broken Trident, even though it's a manga. It's not the same style, but the story's fitting, and we actually canonized it. Essentially, it takes place on the other side of the world from Broken Trident. So that's why I wanted to bring up Broken Trident real quick first.
So let's actually talk about that too, because sorry to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
Interesting, because obviously you had a successful one in comic in Broken Trident, it funded, and then you built this world and you have this going on, and then obviously somebody has a project that is done, and it wasn't that it wasn't successful, it was just not in the right environment for it to reach a bigger audience. And nothing against the Philippines, but when you look at the US market, you look at, I guess, Western nations, they tend to have sometimes a bigger market. I mean, the three largest comic markets in the world are Japan, France, and the US.
Right. And he was gearing it, the whole thing was written in English to begin with. It was geared for an American, Filipino, and American audience. And so yeah, basically, and I'm gonna try to act like I'm not reading this, but his words, his words that we have right on the Kickstarter page. If you like shonen fantasy adventures that involve fun yet heartwarming emotions and an action-packed story, this is the manga for you. Narrative structure is likened to Iseki, what you had just brought up. And then he also compares it to, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon, which I had never heard of, but the name alone is like intriguing and
I know that show. I know a bunch of those voice actors in that show too.
Oh, okay.
See, this is why this is interesting, right? Because I find that this is fascinating because you've taken a manga that was already done and then you've canonized it and you brought it into your world. And that's what's fascinating, actually, because I think I was speaking to somebody, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but he was explaining that there's been all these people in Hollywood who have taken a really bad B movie, bought it off of somebody, took maybe a 70% ownership stake of it, paid somebody a little bit of money, gave them 30% of it, and then basically took some of the footage, added some new footage, and created a better movie that made money for everybody. And to me, if you could bring in a comic from somebody else, maybe make a few tweaks, place it on another side or in another component, either future, past, or other side of the world, it expands your universe. It also expands what they did, and everybody can make money. And I think it's so interesting with this book and this manga that that's essentially what I think you did. And I think it's actually a brilliant thing. And we don't see more of this. And I don't really get why in comics that people don't do more of this, because to me, it seems like it's a no-brainer.
I know. I love the concept of the world building, the expanding the world. And I mean, you look at like the success that the MCU had is basically that same concept of bringing all these different heroes together into one. So yeah, I love that. And another really cool thing about this How to Build an Army, there's these like serpent people in it, and Travis, my co-writer / editor for Broken Trident, he was going to be here tonight, but he couldn't. He ended up working late. Well, he's my little brother, and we grew up writing comics together in our basement, and one of the embarrassingly bad species / like character that we had created was this snake people. One of them's name was like Viper, one of them's name was Cobra, one of them's name was Snaketarian. That was the leader of all of them. And it was just so, the mind of a 12 and 8-year-old, and I've got the drawings of them still. I should post them on our socials here. But the idea behind it wasn't bad. It's just, like I said, the mind of a child. And Eiler has these serpent people in his comic, in his manga, that are basically like what we wanted these snake beings to be. And so when we saw that, when he showed that to us, we were like, oh my God, like this was meant to be like this. Like, it's insane that he thought of this and we thought of this, and he actually, like, it came to fruition with him as, because he did it as an adult. But I love the kind of coincidence there.
Yeah, and to even go further, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, it's really focusing on, there's dragons in here, there's serpent people, as you were sort of stating. It's also the idea of coming. We have him back.
Oh, yes.
All right, now he can describe the manga, because I'm tearing it up.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and we started without you a little bit, and we were getting into it, and a little bit about how it takes place in the same world, but it's on the other side of the world. And so obviously you could probably explain a little bit better than your publisher can explain it.
Yes.
He did a good job. But you could do better. We're hoping.
Yeah. Anyway, I just got distracted because today's just crazy. Like, a power line just like exploded in our street. Like,
everybody's okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
Nobody died as far as we're concerned.
Okay. Yeah. So,
but yeah. So I mean, obviously, we were talking about the manga, and it's very similar to an Isekai. I'm a big anime fan, and so like, what is the basic premise? For those who are hearing about it, and then obviously we're going to dive into it, and we're speaking even just about how it's in the same world as Broken Trident, but it's also a whole different story. And I don't think it has anything to do with Broken Trident currently, beyond the fact that it's just sharing a world with it.
Yeah, it really doesn't right now, because I think they're on the same world, but I think it's in my head, it's even like in an earlier timeline a bit, and on the other side of the world. So basically, the protagonist maybe would probably cross paths. If they would cross paths, the protagonist would be a bit, like older, something.
Yes,
And
let's get into it because obviously we have, from my understanding, pretty much a kingdom is somewhat destroyed
yes,
in this, and then we have a prince that's somewhat thrusted into this world, and obviously he's rebuilding an army, and
yes, we're building an
on an
army.
adventure, and there's dragons and serpent people and other creatures. And so, what is this like? Because it has a lot of traits that are similar to an Iseki, as I was stating, and a
Yes,
character who's from a different world coming into it. But also, we have other things in there, and it's obviously a manga, which makes it fun.
yes,
So, what is this like to really build that up? Because the title says it all in a lot of ways, but
yes, yes,
he's building an army.
yes. He's building an army. Yeah.
But what is this like to have and really write this story and draw it and create it? Because you don't see American mangas in a lot of ways,
Right.
and you don't see an Iseki, but they're fun to do. And
Yes, they are like, yeah. Um, in a sense, if you do you remember like Army of Darkness?
Army of Darkness. Oh man, I'm
I
trying to
really
think.
love that. For me, it's like even way before the isekai thing. It's the first isekai that I really saw, and it was like it never really there was never really done again. You know, like because I'm a fan of the Evil Dead and in the Army of Darkness movie.
I was gonna say, are you
And
talking about the Bruce Campbell chainsaw arm
yes,
Army of Darkness?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes, yes. It's like he's from the modern times, thrust into this medieval fantasy world, and
Yeah,
which
that's
is
such a good
yeah,
movie.
which is the basis for like most isekai things, right? Like they're from another world. Um, yeah, but for how to build an army is like because the way that they structure their story is built in a like the way I love those isekai stories from the anime is built like um, they have the structure of like building up to something like and they have really good character development and growth. So and also like shonen storylines, and there's not too many shonen storylines, I guess, because I'm a fan of Naruto and like the way they built their universe. They have their own like cultures and structures and yeah, like government structures, and I really love like world building, and so yeah, that's what I really enjoy about this comic is like the world building and
Yeah, and even to dive into that too, because a good part of this world has been developed. So
yes,
in Trident, you can't go and start modifying the planet, in which that
right,
what's ever
right,
happened in Trident, you have to pertain to some rules, but you also
yeah,
get to invent a bunch of other stuff. So since it's
yeah,
on the other side of the world, this kingdom that they're building, it could be in the desert, it could be in, the middle of, an ice storm, it could be on an oasis. You have a lot of freedoms too, but also you have somewhat rules. And that's kind of nice to some degree, I would imagine,
right,
because you don't have to invent the whole thing. And you also, aren't, you have a lot of freedom too. And obviously, what they're doing in this world and what's happening in this book, How to Build an Army, isn't at the moment going to affect what's going to happen in Trident. And so that's cool too because you don't have to worry too much about that.
yeah,
I'm sure that you can't like go create like a natural disaster that wipes out 90% of humanity in your book. But at the same time, if this kingdom gets exterminated completely after 500 chapters, may never cross paths with Trident. So what is that
yes,
like too? Because there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do, but then also you can cross paths with
Yeah.
Trident at some point. So a lot of options are on the table, and that's what's so interesting about this. And we're clearly doing what the title's saying too, which is nice too in a comic.
Yes.
So I mean, I just find it interesting, and I don't know how to ask a question because the title says it all.
Yeah. 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 And one of the most interesting thing I've learned about what we talked about with Dave before was he mentioned about like in this world something happened that interrupted the magic in this universe, right? Remember
In
that?
the Broken Trident world.
Yes, in
yeah.
the Broken
Yeah.
Trident world, yeah. Something happened, and it limited the usage of magic in this world. So, um, and because in what I was writing, like most of the main characters, I was intentionally like gonna make it like it's gonna be science versus magic. Serpent people has magic, and the protagonist, mostly humans and elves, but they are not the magical type of elves. Because in this world there are magical type of elves, and there are elves that are. This is gonna be a spoiler because the female elf is like half elf. Um, so he's not gonna. She is not gonna be like a magical type. So it's gonna be like um, the forces or the army they're gonna build is gonna be like very science, science based, or they're gonna use science against the magic of the serpent people. That's what's gonna build up to. So I was researching and thinking of ways and weapons that are gonna be like very technological, but at the same time medieval. And yeah, so it's gonna be interesting because like it fits right into the narrative of what Dave was like mentioned before. Like some of the in a supposedly magical world, why are there like people existing without magic? So it's an
So,
interesting
so
plot
let's
point.
even talk about that too, because now let's just get into the character stuff. This
Yeah.
because any good manga has an array of characters. Any good comic has
Yes.
an array of characters, and so obviously you have magic characters. You have
Yes.
a character who sort of is, thrusted into this world and
Mm.
now is tasked with rebuilding an army and bringing back an army. And then on the other side, I mean, you have now science dealing with going up against magic, and now you got this weird array of stuff mixing together and
Yeah.
conflicting with each other. And obviously, I mean, this has been done in anime, this has been done in manga. And
Yeah.
what is that like? Because that's always a fun showdown when you get science and magic going up against each other. Because in a lot of ways, they are polar opposites.
Yes.
And so that's always fun. And the saying is, I'm a huge wrestling fan, and then the saying is styles that clash make for good matches.
Right. Right.
So what is that like to start pulling that out, and then you're having all these characters doing stuff, and then now this is where we now get to see people's personalities evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like the building of that, like just building the scenes in my head takes a lot of watching movies and watching YouTube stuffs. I love to watch how to do things. Like I was following this guy. Like I think he's also one of the inspiration why I tried to like create the manga. I was inspired by fantasy manga, anime, and whatnots. But he's one of the inspiration. Also, was this guy who builds crossbows. Yeah, yeah. He builds a lot of crossbows on his channel. So I was like, oh man, I would love to do like a manga, also a manga that has an excuse that I would like just draw, and maybe like do instructionals that are actually feasible. Like you could really make the crossbow someday.
So
Yeah,
let's even go into this too, and I'm curious
yeah,
how
yeah.
on Dave's side of this. Obviously, I mean, you have this manga now being brought in. You have Tridents that did well, and that's taking place on one side. I think we were talking about this a little bit. And now you have this thing being brought in, and now you're piecing together a world in a lot of ways. And so, what is that like for you? Because obviously, you know, Dave, you're taking a step back now with this manga where you didn't ink it, you didn't draw, you didn't write it, but you might have suggested a few tweaks here and there, and you had to make it fit. But now it adds an element that didn't exist in your world before. And so, what is that like? Because now you have a conflict heading on the other side and completes it more. Even if these two worlds never interact with each other, they're saying, hey, look, if I love tridents and this takes place in the same world, you now have a built in customer to some degree for that, or vice versa, where if somebody says, never heard of tridents, but they see this and they're like, man, I really like that manga, there's more material. And so, what is that like? Because from a company's position, this just expanded your line, but it also expanded the world. And then who's to say you can't add a third, fourth, fifth piece? And now you have a universe that's being built very slowly, but still being built.
Right. That was the most exciting thing about it was when we made that decision to go, okay, these are in line with each other. They can be in the same world. It was really cool. It was kind of, I think we were still off air when I was talking about this, but it kind of reminds me of the MCU and how that world was built. And
Yes.
even before we brought in How to Build an Army, our main goal of Broken Trident and our plan, I guess I should say, is Broken Trident is one mini series and it's going to be 5 issues. But on the bottom of the cover of Broken Trident, it says Keepers of Venox Chapter 1. So Keepers of Venox is the overarching story of the whole everything that's happening Broken Trident. Broken Trident's just the intro, so it's the Iron Man movie of our universe, like it's getting us into the whole world. And then we have planned 3 more miniseries, 2 of which will be characters that are in Broken Trident. And then the 4th one is actually another. So the Janor from Broken Trident was one of my first D&D characters that I ever played. And then my second D&D character, Varen, he's going to be introduced at some point in one of these Keepers of Venox miniseries. And then he'll be the 4th miniseries. And then the 5th miniseries will actually be the culmination of all of this. And it'll kind of be the Avengers of it all, where the 4 miniseries main characters come back together and team up to take on the big bad kind of thing. And now that we've got How to Build an Army, it would be really cool if we can pepper in elements of How to Build an Army, or maybe that in that final series, that's where they finally get to meet Veda, the main character from How to Build an Army. Like if he shows up in that 5th miniseries, that'd be awesome to bring that all together.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's interesting because obviously world building, and again, I haven't produced a book. I don't know if I'm ever going to produce a book. There's a lot of other things that I do, and I'm really involved in my other businesses at the moment. And I'm in the process of building a fintech company, sort of, fintech education company. So clearly my time in writing a comic book is not at the top of the list. It would be fun, but what is that like though? Because I think that's one of the biggest problems is that there's not enough content for all these companies and it doesn't get out fast enough. And so what is this like that Adler, I think of your name, right? Or is it
Tyler, yes.
So obviously you Eiler, you've done this already, which actually speeds up the process tremendously. Where Dave doesn't have to go produce art, he doesn't have to pay for art, he doesn't have to wait for it to be done. And so what is that like too? Because that speeds up a universe. And if you brought in a third person who did another manga, now you have an additional book that's done. It doesn't take away from your artist and your resources. So what is that like? Because I think that you're onto something and you're building a universe a lot quicker than people realize.
like I keep saying, it's exciting, and I think you're right. If it wouldn't even necessarily have to be a manga. It could be a manga or a traditional comic or whatever. It would be cool to have another team member, another aspect like that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because I want to, get Broken Trident and Keepers of Enox and now How to Build an Army. But if we had someone that was already established that also fit, I would certainly read it and consider it and welcome it.
The reason why I bring this up is that I had Tom Hutchinson last night on with Brian Peterson from Big Dog Inc. And what they decided to do, and I think it's really smart, is that they were originally doing 20-page books out on Kickstarter. And rather, they started combining issues 9 and 10 or 7 and 8. So all of a sudden you go, and if you're producing 3, you will produce 5 issues in 3 Kickstarters. And so the reason why is that it's more money up front for the art, and it costs a little bit more because you got to pay for another 20 pages of art. But you're also getting more Kickstarters done. You're getting more content out because we live in a society where, I hate to say this, but I want my content now, and I want a bunch of it. And so I think that if you brought on another manga that fit in, or another traditional comic that was telling another story in a third part of the world, and now you have 3 lines coming out, or you have 6 books coming out a year, it might be worth picking up that title because guess what? You're saving a boatload of time. There's only so much you can do. And that's where I think it gets really tricky because now we're going into the businesses side of comics. And
I've thought of that, and I would love to have that option. I look at some of these other successful creators, and one that comes to mind is Oneshi Press. They JL, and they have a book called Pack. They've got a couple anthologies that come out. It's like every month they've got a new thing going on Kickstarter, and they don't abandon their other ones. They constantly have something going, and that's basically they're doing this for a living, from my understanding. Love those guys, and I kind of have they're one of the people that I know through Comics Launch that I kind of look up to and try to emulate their business model. And you're absolutely right. If we had another 1, 2, 3, even other people that were fully producing things that now I'm just acting as publisher at this point, but also bringing it into our world, that's the biggest thing. That's key, because if we can get things that line up with our world, and by doing so not hindering their world and not altering ours too much, the same way that how to Build an Army did with Keepers of Enox, that would be amazing. So if anybody's watching, hit me up.
Because I think this is where this gets really interesting. This is the biggest failure, in my opinion, is there's a lot of creativity in producing a concept, or even getting a book out, or the art to some degree, I think is creative, or how you want to tell a story. Where I think the creativity actually fails in comics, and I've seen this way too much, is getting creative in business. And this is where I think it's a big problem. And also the other side that fails is making enough money, or how to distribute your money, or even how to take a distribution out of your business, or when it's healthy enough to do it. Those are 2 of the biggest problems in comics. And I don't think any of the people who have their methodologies really talk about that. I talk about taking distributions out of your business, because I do it in my eBay business, and I do it in a few other things that I'm involved in.
When you say take a distribution out of your business, you mean like taking earnings out, like
when to take earnings out and how much to take out.
Yeah,
that's a big thing, and when to take out earnings. Because
we won't be doing that anytime soon because we can't.
or even how to redeploy capital, because I didn't take out earnings in my eBay business for a while, and I've been doing this for almost 10 years. The reason why I bring all this up is it's a very important skill when you're now doing comics to understand when is something healthy enough to do that. And nobody in comics talks about that side of the business. Because it's not fun to talk about that side of the business.
Right.
I think that, though, that by bringing Eiler on to do his comic and he approached you or you found him, I think it's brilliant. And I think it's actually a brilliant business move more than anything else. And I think people can take a page out of your book for saying, this works in our world. We have to tweak a few things, but we just saved hours, if not months, of time. Because to produce that book, if you were paying for it and financing it and handling it, would be very difficult while trying to
Right.
get another book. And I
It
think
was
it's
perfect. It was perfect timing too, because we Travis and I both got really busy with work, with our day jobs, those pesky day jobs that keep us from being creative, and
Mm.
so
I'm
we
gonna just
couldn't.
make one comment about that before I continue. Healthcare and a 401k, if you got it, are nothing to complain about.
Oh,
That's
for sure, for sure.
that's all I'm gonna say on your day
Oh,
job.
I completely agree. I love
have not-
my day job. It's just very time consuming. I work 50 to 70 hours a week, and it's very time consuming. That's a switch. When I was writing Broken Trident, I was same company but was working from home flat 40 hours a week, so it was much easier at that time. So and Travis is a big he's a store manager for a company too. So like he's working 50 plus hours a week,
The
and
only reason why I say this is that the worst piece of advice for any comic creator is quit your day job. You don't quit your day job until your comic is producing 2.5x what your day job is producing.
oh,
That is
for
when you
sure,
quit.
for sure. I'm not going to risk that. But anyway, so we got so busy with these day jobs that we weren't able to produce Broken Trident too fast enough, And going back to what you said, people want their content now. And so we really wanted to be able to we had big grand plans of we're going to get 3 out in a year, 4 out in a year, whatever. And then everything slowed down when our jobs got busier, and we were like, oh my God, when are we going to be able to launch this? And then that was when Eiler said, well, hey, we can launch How to Build an Army. And it was like, okay, perfect. Let's get that moving. And that even went a little slower than we wanted to, just because of trying to find time to build the campaign. Building a Kickstarter campaign is not fast or easy. No, that's no slight to Kickstarter. They're great, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of effort. You got to keep your audience engaged. You got to keep them updated. You got to put all the info into Kickstarter. You got to figure out your rewards. Like it's a lot of stuff. I don't think people realize how much work running a Kickstarter is.
Oh, I know. I ran mine for this show and I was hustling like crazy. And the amount of shit that I got for running a Kickstarter for a podcast was ludicrous. It was ludicrous. It was one of the most disturbing things I've ever gone through. And the amount of hate that I got for that was uncalled for. And it raises a lot of questions. Raises a lot of questions about where people truly stand on issues. Oh, and they know that I know where they stand. Before anybody continues, they know. And they don't ask me questions anymore for a good reason. Which is sad, because they should really be asking me the question how to get rich. But and I'll tell them I'm sorry, but I only associate with Tom. But whoa, Rich went swimming. It's not a big deal, guys. But anyway, I think it's a great point about just time management is something that's crazy. But yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think it's brilliant, and I think that taking a page out of the book of hiring somebody or bringing on another project and running through your brand speeds up content. And it even goes further, where if somebody likes project A and now it's under your brand and it's in the same world, they're gonna like project B, or they're gonna at least trust project B. And then there's the other caveat that's really cool, where this is a manga, and manga right now is beating American comics.
Yeah.
It's destroying American comics, to be polite. It's more than anything. Anime has clearly taken over. I mean, look, Sony bought Funimation for $100 million, and they bought Crunchyroll for almost $1.2 billion. So in the last 3 years, $1.3 billion has been spent to buy pretty much Texas's animation farm of dubbing and streaming services. Not to mention that I think AMC bought HD Live or HD Hive. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So what is that like? Because you're entering a market that is so popular right now with this manga. And it's only going to get bigger. And American mangas and that style is really at its infancy. What is that
Yes.
like to be part of that and A, draw it and then also being able to market it?
Um, I I think it also makes me nervous because it's although it's like it's a manga, but it's not really because it's kind of really new thing of its own. Like
So did you feel that
um,
it's like more of an American manga versus
yeah,
traditional Japanese
yeah,
But it
manga?
flips the normal
Yeah.
way. It doesn't read
flips the
backward or
normal way.
whatever. Like,
Yeah,
Because
but it's still
I
black and white. It's the manga size, 5 by 7.5 or whatever. And
yeah. Only the sizing and the lack of color that really makes it kind of like manga. As-
like the
as
writing, I
well.
would say
And the writing.
the
Yeah.
writing
Because
style and
yeah.
the art style even
Yes.
is reminds me of manga.
Because
Yeah.
I look at the concept of it, I look at how it's being read, I look at the story. This is not a traditional comic story.
Yes.
Nothing against traditional comic stories, but you don't see an Iseki in a comic book. It's very rare that we see this. It's very rare that we see even the style and the drawings and the style screams manga.
Yeah.
Whether how it reads traditional American or Japanese and it's black and white, it's manga size. So that's why I say this is really hitting a very cool niche because it's hitting a different demographic. And there are people that if you take this book to a con, there's people who are going to gravitate towards this book instantly versus a copy of Batman because this style is what's very prevalent right now. I have a friend who does a manga book and it sells out at cons very quickly because that's what all these new kids want. And Comic Cons are now becoming anime cons, and they're the hottest thing on the planet at the moment. And
Yeah.
so, what is that like? Because I think you're touching upon a niche that is really well done. And I just think you need to get it in front of the right eyes.
Yeah, I think that's our biggest obstacle right now is trying to get it out there. And I learned the other day actually that Kickstarter does not have a category or subcategory for manga. It only has comics. And I feel like that's a misstep on and again, no disrespect to Kickstarter, but I feel like they should have a manga category because like you said, it is so popular and that would only help their creators, which also then helps their bottom line because the more successful projects they have, the more money they make. So if people are searching for manga, they have to type the word manga and then hope that manga is in the title of what they're like ours I think does say manga in the title, but it would be helpful if it was its own category because it, like you said, it is so successful. They're so popular.
I think that obviously Kickstarter's evolving. There's no question about Kickstarter.
Yeah, for sure.
5 years ago, manga and what was going on with that was not a big deal. I mean, 3 years ago, manga on Kickstarter didn't exist. Yeah, I mean, it existed, but it was more along in webtoons, and it wasn't where it was today, and it's now being taken more seriously. I think what was in 2021, manga beat out American graphic novels. And so that's where we're at, is that the tides have shifted. So clearly they need to evolve in that regard.
Right. I believe that too, because we did a giveaway to like amp up Broken Trident before it launched. And we had 69 entrants to that giveaway. And then while Broken Trident was live, we did a second giveaway. We had 70 entrants to that giveaway. I don't remember exactly what we gave away for each one, but whatever. And then for this, right before How to Build an Army launched, I did a giveaway, and I did a One Piece graphic novel set, My Hero Academia graphic novel set issue or volumes 1 through 20, and a One Piece Funko Pop and a One Piece plushie. And we had almost 3,000 entrants compared to the 69 and 70 from the other two giveaways. I mean, and I only did a $100 Facebook ad or something for that giveaway. So I didn't put a ton of effort into it, enough effort, obviously, but just insane. I could not believe how much people were going nuts over this, this giveaway. And that translated to 71 page followers, to the Kickstarter page, which was awesome. And on top of that, to talk about the love for manga, my one of my best friend's daughters, she's 13 years old, and she loves manga. Like when we showed her this, she read Broken Trident, and then which Broken Trident has kind of manga tones in it.
Yes.
And then it was funny because I showed her How to Build an Army that we were launching and everything, and I kept saying manga, and she was like, "It's manga." Like this little 13-year-old's correcting me on it. But that brings me to a good point that we should talk about is that Eiler should talk about is the manga tones that are in Broken Trident. I love that.
No, it's because I just think it's really interesting, and obviously I think that there's a huge love for this stuff, and there's a reason why I'm gearing up more towards voice actors and things of that nature, and certain things just sell on my channel. I mean, I know for a fact that every time I do a voice actor, that thing over time is going to do a lot more views than anything else will, and especially when it's dominant. And manga's the same way. And anytime somebody does a manga review, Nicholas Mueller. I don't know if you know Nicholas Mueller by any chance. He does. He just did like a Winnie the Pooh type Demon Slayer book type. I forget his book, but it was like a mash. It was a fun concept. But he just did a review on his YouTube channel that doesn't have a lot of views. It did almost like 1,200 views reviewing an anime. And so it was an okay review. Wasn't very rehearsed. It wasn't clean, but people wanted to know the opinion on it. And he doesn't have a lot of subscribers. So clearly, I think you guys are touching upon a niche that's really well done. I just think that Kickstarter, for whatever reason right now, isn't working for certain people. And it could be just the structure. It could be whatever. It could just be that it just doesn't hit. It's not algorithmed correctly. It's not, the searchable words aren't there. It could also be that you just didn't get in front of the right people. And because I don't think the product's the problem. I think at cons, if you had 200 of these books, I think if you went to 4 cons within 3 months, I think you'd sell out of all 200 of your books very easily. I don't think you would have a hard time at a con selling these books right now. I think the problem is that the audience isn't there. And I think it's oddly enough, it's just not on Kickstarter. And I think it might be Kickstarter's fault. It just might be timing, or who knows what it is. But I don't think it's the product.
Right.
Because the manga world is just too big. And people are starving for this content. And this is why I was drawn to this campaign, because I'm like, this book should have been funded by now.
I think so too. I'm really, I'm very surprised it's not. Of course I launched it, so I think that, but
because I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm not saying that this is the next One Piece, and I don't think you guys are saying that either. But with the popularity of manga, this thing should have been funded, or it should have been a hell of a lot closer to being funded than it is.
I know, and that they say if you get to 50% on your Kickstarter, you have like a 99.9% chance of funding. Even if you get to 50%, like with 2 days left, and we're at like 42%. So like, I'm just like refreshing this thing like constantly like, God, are we to 50% yet? Or do we, and like, I'm just waiting. And sorry to sidetrack a little bit. Travis, our editor and co-writer of Broken Trident, who was did not have the energy to be on this interview with us, is watching the interview, and I guess he's commented. So I was just gonna say, what I haven't seen the comments. He just shot me a text, so I'm just curious what he commented on the YouTube link.
He's just commenting on a bunch of stuff, but I don't like reading my comments. I'm lazy because it's so distracting. It distracted so easily. But I think it's so interesting because this I mean, I'm very perplexed, and I'm not a Kickstarter expert, but I know that your book's going to do well out of it. That's what's so weird about this is that, and I don't think you're the first manga. I think manga sometimes just doesn't connect. I almost feel like manga to some degree is very visual too. I go to Barnes and Noble, every other Saturday essentially because I love it. They have a Starbucks. I'm seeing graphic novels, and I love picking up manga. And you have all these kids showing up with their parents, picking up 2, 3, 4 manga books, and they're reading it and they know everything about it. And so the market is healthy, and I think they're starving for the content. I find it weird. That's my point, but I digress. I just find that it's just odd. And I'll say this, I do, from what I've read, I've only read like the 9 or 10 pages. It's not bad. And it's just very confusing on this. So, but I also think that the January is a weird time. I think
I do too. I was a little worried about that, but it was just it worked for my schedule, and I know there truly isn't a bad time to launch if you have the right following. I think part of the problem was, we've got this following of this American style comic book, and then the transition to a manga could be a little jarring if you're not familiar with it. But I do think I don't think that necessarily dooms it. I think also I asked for some feedback in some groups that I'm in on Facebook, and I've got some Facebook ads, or meta ads as they're calling them now, running, and I'm gonna rework those ads actually as soon as we're done with this interview. I'm gonna rework those ads, basically start them from scratch to make the images a little better. And then also I was gonna talk to Eiler about this. The other feedback I got was our project image is compelling and it looks really good. The one with Veda, and the name is escaping me, the girl that's in the image with Veda. But the image is them sitting there, where we could change it to them being more action-packed and intriguing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do feel like there are some things that we could still do to hopefully save this campaign. I'm like mentally prepared for it to not fund now because we only have 10 or 11 days left, but I'm not giving up. You know what I mean? Like I'm not. What's that?
Let's talk about that too, because I have a friend, Chris Brown, who did a game called Gone Hunting. It's a board game, and the first round he did it was clear that it wasn't going to make it. He had like 1,500, he needed 9,000. It wasn't going to make it. And we're speaking about Rob Motari, and he had a campaign, and he also realized that very early on, way back in the day, he has one going on right now with his Night Wolf plushies. And there's a point where you have to realize this thing isn't going to fund. And I think you have two choices. You can say, look, let's just see where it ends, because you're still going to gather data from it. And then you can say, cool, we got to 75%, but why didn't we cross the 25%? Or if you know you're not going to fund, you call it, you gather the data that you can out of it, and then you cancel it out with, fixing the problem and then running with it. And maybe you got to tweak some rewards. Maybe the problem is that it's just a weird month, or maybe you didn't do enough media, or maybe there was a bigger issue going on, or maybe for whatever reason it just didn't connect, and maybe you rework some words or you figure out some SEO with it. But what is this like? Because it's still, I think you don't have to make that call today, but even seeing with where you're at and all that stuff, how do you rework all this and handle it?
My plan is, and I haven't even talked to Eiler about this yet, so we're going to discuss this live on the interview. But my plan is, if it fails, and Travis and I actually had a phone discussion about this last night. If it fails, which I'm not conceding yet, I'm still positive. I'm 100% positive. I think that after I rework the ads, and then Eiler, you and I can talk after this about reworking that project image. But
Yes.
let's just say worst case scenario, it fails. Then we are not going to relaunch it right away. We're gonna hang on to it. It's a great project. It's a great manga. I love it. But if it doesn't succeed right now, we're gonna table it for a little bit, and we're gonna move along with Broken Trident 2, and maybe even 3, 4, 5. And by then, because generally with comic Kickstarters, your followers and your backer count go up, which is an awesome thing about Kickstarter. You know, if you launch a brand new comic in a comic book store, issue 1 sells 100 copies, issue 2 sells 50, issue 3 sells 25. You know, and in a Kickstarter, it's the other way around. It's usually exponential growth. So if that's the case, and this didn't hit right now, that's fine. We're not giving up on it by any means. We're just gonna let it marinate a little bit, and then in 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 launches down the road, we'll relaunch, and we'll come back bigger and stronger, and learn from the mistakes that we made along the way here, and I think at that point it will succeed.
It's very interesting, and it's also just even figuring out what to do and how to adjust, because there is no right answer to all this. And so that's something that is really just interesting. And I know people who figure out what went wrong, and maybe they put the price point down, maybe they got to readjust, maybe they need variant coverage. And there's a bunch of different stuff that goes into that. But I find it interesting. I mean, I had this question. I ran my Kickstarter for this show, and I luckily funded it. But I also said, I'm going to see where it lands, and we'll see what happens. And I was fortunate enough that I funded. But again, I think sometimes that's a good thing too. So obviously that's something that's fascinating. But I do want to talk about the reward side of this, because there's a bunch of different stuff going on. It is Make 100 project. So that's going on, where there's 100 hardcovers, I want to say. There's single issues as well. You can get some Broken Trident in it too. And so what is that like? Because that's kind of cool too, where it's very limited edition. And I've seen people do Make 100 projects, and then they only have 100 variants. And then a month or 2 months later, they then launch the full one. But you can't get that limited 100 issue run on.
Right.
That was the point. And Preston Poulter.
That was really interesting, actually. Like I had never heard of the Make 100 month on Kickstarter until leading up to this month, so like the end of December. And I was like, okay, let's jump on that. And you don't have to. The point of Make 100 is to encourage some smaller works and stuff, but you don't have to limit yourself to 100. You just have to have one tier that has 100 items in it, and only 100 items. So I thought, okay, that's like a big thing on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter is going to help push your book a little bit with the Make 100. I guess I thought that might help some, and we've got a fair amount of pledges for the $40 hardcover. So we'll see where that goes. I'm hoping we get a few more. I'm hoping, I don't think we're going to get 100. It'd be awesome if we did, but even if we don't get 100, we'll print 100 of them and have them for cons, and there will only ever be 100, regardless of if they're sold on Kickstarter or not. We will not print more than 100 of this hardcover, and then going to the
Are you going to
business side of things.
serialize them? Are you going to serialize them? Because that'd be a cool idea.
Like 1 of 100, 2 of 100.
Yeah. Like one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
I'm gonna
that's
talk
cool.
to my printer about that for sure, and then it's truly a limited edition. It makes the collector item part of it go up so much.
Or even you could just put on it, limited to 100 on like the cover, like an LE 100 on the top
Right,
of the cover,
right.
so you don't even have to write in it, but everybody knows, because then you add that value to it.
For sure, because there will only ever be 100 of it. We won't do reprints of the hardcover, nothing, like ever. Like that will be it. The other thing, when you mention rewards, yeah, Broken Trident is part of this because it's Lakeshore Comics, so we kind of looked at it as like our email list was only at about 500 people when we launched Broken Trident, and when we launched How to Build an Army, our email list is at about 2,700 people. So that means that a large chunk of those people on the email list possibly don't have Broken Trident, haven't heard of Broken Trident. So we treated this launch as like it's the priority is, of course, How to Build an Army, but also it's almost like an opportunity to relaunch Broken Trident to get people on board with that, So yeah, you can get all 3 covers of Broken Trident on this launch. You can get the Janor minifigure. Then we did the Veda How to Build an Army minifigure too. We had Broken Trident T-shirts available on the first campaign. Now we did Broken Trident, and we've got actual just Lakeshore Comics T-shirts. We decided to do that instead of a How to Build an Army T-shirt, which maybe we'll do that later on, or if we relaunch or whatever. But this is we probably won't have these available again. But I'm actually drinking out of the Lakeshore Comics / Broken Trident metal can koozie by Frostbuddy. So those are available on there too. So yeah, it's got a plethora of rewards and things available, and lots of stuff to be excited about.
You got a lot of stuff, and obviously it's an interesting project, and your goal is only $2,000, I think, which is not that difficult, but apparently, it's a struggle, and that's where we're at. And obviously, I mean, the book looks good, and it looks like a manga, and it looks like it's hitting a niche, and it's just unfortunate. But then again, as things happen, and you'd be surprised on what happens. I mean, it's January 18th when we're recording this, and we're live. And so obviously things, I think, are about to kick up, and things are going to get very interesting, I think, on Kickstarter. But obviously there's a lot of rewards, and, it looks good. And obviously I put the link up above, down below to the Kickstarter for everybody who's seeing this and is about to see it and be pushing it out. But I do want to ask you questions outside of your Kickstarter, because I am curious, because I ran a Kickstarter. It's a lot of work, as we were talking about, and it's complicated. And comics collectively right now are complicated. Marvel, DC are not producing good books, whether you like them or not. I don't think that's a secret. If that's controversial, I don't know what to say. And there's a lot of stuff in comics that is not good. There's a lot of stuff that is good. And I'm curious how you guys feel about the current state of the comic industry. Manga is destroying, and I mean destroying, American comics. And so how do you guys feel about the current state of the comic industry, where it's going, where Kickstarter is going, where indie comics are going, and all that stuff? Because it's a very weird time to be in this space.
I'll let Eiler go first because I feel like I've been talking a lot. So go ahead, Eiler.
Mm-hmm. I think we just really need to find a really good strategy, and I think part of the reason that How to Build an Army is not getting really good traction is like it's something new. It's I would understand if people have doubts about the product, because it's really something quite different. And I guess on the business side, yeah, we're hoping that we could just emulate whatever like uh, manga strategies are doing. Like the what do you call this jump manga, the Shonen Jump. Yeah, yeah. Because if you look at it, like it, the Shonen book is like really thick, and it's a collection of lots of manga stories, and some of the stories featured on those book um, has already been published. They just like pushing it again and mixing it with new stuffs. And on that book, you could have like uh, Hero Academia, One Piece, and whatever on that book. They're just helping out each other. I guess that's why they're like on top of everything, because everything is like they all like instead of like really competing, even like other titles are from other studios, they would promote each other. You rarely hear them like trash talk other, like even the creators, like in interviews, like the One Piece creator would never disrespect the Dragon Ball creators or his characters. Even if you try to bait him, he would like he does not do that. Like they would really help out each other. I guess it's one of the things that like got them to where they are at, because they build each other up. So yeah, and if we could find like other creators that are willing to do like something like a Shonen Jump, like one thick book with every like so every title would help promote each title. That'd be really cool too. I wanted to talk to Dave about it. And yeah, I guess we just need more strategies.
Like you said, getting creative with
Mm,
the business. Yeah.
yeah,
And is
It's
that
an issue. It's an issue in comics where a lot of people are not creative. I also think a lot of people. I come from more of an institutional background, with finance and just creativity and media. I am an investor. Obviously, it's in my name. And I'm a big equity investor in a lot of media companies right now, holding their shares and holding a significant amount of their shares. And I've been adding more and more lately. And so I think that there's a big misconception on how things work and who owns what and what owns who. And I think that a lot of creators need to actually get an education outside of comics and in media and understanding how business works and how all this stuff works together. But what were you saying, Dave?
um so just to kind of come back to the question at hand, the state of the comics world, and the big two, Marvel and DC. I love Marvel and DC. Like I always have. I'm wearing a classic Jay Garrick Flash T-shirt. Like I, I I love Marvel and DC. I I think that their books that they're putting out right now are the best thing in the world. No, I think they ebb and flow like anything else. I X-Men is my all-time favorite comic book ever. Like I love it. The Fox movies destroyed the name of X-Men. Those movies were so terrible. I will have the unpopular opinion that Hugh Jackman should have never been Wolverine. He's a great actor. He did a good job in the part, but he was a horrible miscast. So not to tangent too much on that, but my point is I love X-Men. Chris Claremont is, if I could meet one comic creator, it'd be Chris Claremont. I love that man. Um, and a couple of years ago, Jonathan Hickman took over for X-Men, and I thought that it was cool. It was interesting. It was a huge divergent. It jumped off from from where they were for so long. Um, very different, very unique take on X-Men. I read House of X, Powers of 10, loved it. Then when it got off on its own story, I thought it was a little off-putting. I didn't like that I don't know how familiar you are with the current X-Men world, but they
A
can't
little.
die now. They they're all immortal. If they die, they just rebirth a clone that has the memories implanted, and I just didn't like that. And then Hickman left, and I just stopped. I took him off my pull list. I didn't care anymore at that point. And Flash is another comic that I was reading regularly that now went back to Wally West as the Flash now instead of Barry Allen, and I don't know. I haven't read it lately, so I can't say too much about it. I still have it on my pull list, but I'm just collecting it at this point.
Yes. So I mean, my biggest pet peeve, and this might add some clarity, is that I don't think that they're producing good books.
I know I was trying to say that without saying it.
I mean, I don't think they're producing good books. I think they're producing good covers. I think
Yeah, oh
these
yeah, for sure.
producing-
Their art's good for the most part, but
their cover art's good. The
Yeah.
interiors are okay.
yeah, it depends on the book for sure. Like if you know, I don't want to. I definitely don't want to trash talk the two companies that I would love to work for. You know, like
This is the problem, though, is that I think what's happened is that all the good editors have left. And I think there's been a lot of issues in these companies. And I also think they've become IP. And this is one of the biggest problems, is that DC and Marvel are now an IP farm. Because when you're doing a movie that does 1.2 billion and it's a bad movie and it's still doing 1.2 billion, I mean, Thor Love and Thunder was not a good movie, and it made a lot of money. Made a lot of money, even though it was a bad movie. And I'm not saying that I don't think anybody was a bad actor in that movie. It just didn't work.
Yeah, it was the tonal shift was all over the place. Like
I think it was written like an episode of Avengers series. That's how I felt. Like the beat was like, it's not a movie beat. It's like, an episode of, like, if you watch Avengers cartoons, it's like that.
If it was a 3-parter on Disney Plus, it would not have been destroyed the same way, because it would have been a 3-parter, like a 3-part miniseries on Disney Plus that wasn't sold as a movie, but as a 3-episode part of just telling this story. It was rough, but it didn't cost me a penny. Right? It didn't waste me in a movie seat. It didn't waste me buying popcorn thinking it was going to be good.
Well, I think what happened was Thor Ragnarok, in my opinion, was one of the best Marvel movies of all time. I loved Thor Ragnarok. I didn't know who Taika Waititi was until I watched Thor Ragnarok, and then I learned who he was, and I was like, oh my god, that movie was amazing. Like, it had the right amount of comedy in it, but still had the proper drama and action that you expect from a Marvel movie. And I think that because that was one of the first Marvel movies that had that amount of comedy in it, they all have a little comic relief, but that one, Ragnarok, had a lot. And I think Marvel and Taika Waititi were like, oh my god, let's capitalize on that. And then they went way too far, and it just became this like outlandish, like slapstick humor. Like, it just didn't fit. Like the fat god, what was it? I can't remember which god that was. The dad of Hercules, was it Zeus?
Zeus, yeah.
Like, that didn't work at all. Like, that was it looked like B movie quality. Like it didn't even look good. Like, it looked fake. Like, it normally the Marvel movies are like, the graphic quality is so good, it's like, oh my god, this is real.
This is my point, where I'm getting, where there's a lot of that in Marvel, DC, and there's a lot of that going on in a lot of indie projects right now. I hate to say it, it's lazy. People have lost the art of telling a story. There's a concept where people have lost dialogue. I pick up indie books and I'm like, man, I just spent 15 to 20 bucks. And I'm like, I kind of want my money back. And it's a real problem. And I think that what's going on is that a lot of creators are writing to pitch to Netflix. They're writing to pitch to Hulu. They're writing to pitch, and they were screenwriters, and then they wanted to do comics, and they still want to write a screenplay, and they want their name up
And
on
that's
the
not the
silver
same
screen.
thing.
And it's
Yeah.
not the same thing, and they're
Right.
not that good. And it's a hard life. And great, they're doing a comic, they're marketing their comic, but their book really isn't good, and it'll get optioned because Hollywood has no other options at the moment. And then they'll
Well,
take that thing and then they'll go, my 14 ideas, they'll pay you for it. But guess what? They'll take 10 comic books and fuse it into one thing. They'll get 4 seasons out of it. And on season 4, it'll be a disaster. You might have made $1 million on it overall, but you didn't really produce what you wanted to produce off of your
right.
book.
And I'd be lying if I'd said that we didn't think about Broken Trident becoming a Netflix series. I would love that, but we didn't write it with that intent. You know, I feel like we're keeping to our core here. Like we're keeping what we want. You know, we're writing this because we want to. We know that the likelihood of us becoming rich and famous off this is very low. So we're not writing with the intent to take over Netflix or Hulu. We want to get our art and our story out there. And if it becomes a Netflix series, great. But I'm not gonna relinquish my rights to it if that were to happen. I would want to have some creative control in what happened there, because I don't want it to get shit on. You know, I don't want it to lose
Yeah.
the meaning behind it. And where our dialogue, I think, and of course I think I wrote it, but me and Travis wrote it, but it's good dialogue, and it's not just there for the sake of being there. We had to cut dialogue. Like we had so much it didn't make sense on the page. Like
There's a concept where you want to show, not tell.
right.
So I had Mike Barron on before you guys, and he described there's a moment of him showing you something. You could say, "Oh, the guy got shot and a puddle of blood was spilling out," or you could give a whole scene and give a bunch of graphics. And when he did it, I'm like, "Fuck, I'm not that good of a writer." That was my response. But there's a concept of showing, not telling, and very, very that's what's lacking in comics is that somebody's not showing anymore. They're telling you. And there's a big difference between those two things. And I also think, again, creativity in business. So if you want to make money in comics, guess what? Maybe you want to have super rare variants that are olive oils that are $50 a pop, and you're doing 50 of them. You know, now 50 times 50 is what is that? 2,500, I want to say, give or take.
Yeah.
So now you just produced 50 copies of a book, and it's $2,500 you just produced. Maybe you have 2 of those on a campaign. You have an audience. They're super exclusive, and now that's how you make your money. Is that you make your money doing stuff like that and selling variants or selling exclusive things, or you make your money by having a hollow foil edition of the manga where it's gold inlay on the spine, and now you only have 100 of those books, or you make it by doing 100 hardcovers or stuff like that. Or if you have an artist on your team, having them sketch in the book and charging an extra $15 for that. And so now, if you want to make money in comics, and this is where the creativity I feel lacks, is that nobody's getting creative saying, look, I have a product and I can add value. And I don't want to go to Netflix. I mean, if I'm going to eventually write something and I'm writing to sell to Netflix, but you're damn sure that when I write it, I'm going to have all these exclusive variants that are not going to be on my Kickstarter. And so that when I sell to Netflix, I have schmuck insurance. Because I'm going to have 500 variants, 500 copies of maybe 6 different variants. That is my exit. That'll be worth 30 to 40 grand. And then again, creativity. That's called business creativity, is that you're ensuring that you get your bonus on top of whatever else you sell, and on top of it, especially when you're selling something to Netflix. And that's where I think the failure is. And what I just gave is legitimately worth millions of dollars. That advice is worth millions of dollars. And the sad part is that nobody's going to listen to it until it's too late.
Exactly.
all these people in comics don't have any clue on how to make their real money, and that's exactly how you do it. It's a problem. But I
Right.
digress. I digress. Don't worry.
No, you're good. I mean, I get that, and we are in our first issue of Broken Trident. We had three covers, standard and two variants, and I love that. I love the exclusivity of it. Like, Eiler's variant of Broken Trident, that is by far our best seller. We did one con so far. Everybody that came to the booth, even if they didn't buy it, picked that one up out of all of them. Like, it is the most beautiful art. It's Janor, the main character, sitting on the ship rail and the sun setting, so the whole cover's got this kind of orange hue to it. I love that art so much, and we already have the variant cover done for Broken Trident #2, which is Sendara. She's kind of the Thor of our world. She's got the lightning powers and stuff. And same art style, because that's the thing about that cover, it was done in a different art style, and now we have in that first comic in Broken Trident, we had our local comic store owner. He did a Frank Miller Wolverine #1 variant, where it was, instead of Wolverine with his claws in front of his face, it's Janor with the 3 prongs of the trident. For this Broken Trident #2 now, Eiler, I don't think I've even showed you this.
Yeah.
We've got, or did I show you the New Mutants one?
Oh, no, not yet.
So New Mutants #87, first appearance of Cable. We've got Sendara, and then little targets of all the Broken Trident characters, just like on, so like, branching out stuff like that. We've got another guy that I know from Minnesota that's a Kickstarter creator that we're hoping to launch Broken Trident 2 in May, and he's launching his at that same time. Hoping to do a variant cover from him, and either a variant cover or a art print with his main characters and our main characters combined. And the only way you get that art print is by backing both of the Kickstarters. So yeah, like you said, business creativity, branching out like that. I mean, I'm trying to do everything we can to stand out.
It's complicated, and honestly, I mean, with Kickstarter, you need to figure out a way how to do it. It's just the reality. You either need to come up with a great concept, or you need to figure out a way how to stand out. And it's tricky. It's complicated. And you know what? People have to figure it out. And look, everybody's going to figure it out eventually. And look, things change. Nothing is certain in Kickstarter land. Just because somebody's on top right now doesn't mean they're going to stay there. And believe me, I mean, I'm a big wrestling fan, and The Undertaker said it really, really well in his Hall of Fame speech. He said, the toes you step on are the asses you're going to be kissing on the way back down. And there's a lot of people working really well in comics right now, but if they step on your toes, remember, they better learn how to kiss a bunch of ass on the way back down, because it's coming. And believe me, there's a whole bunch of people that are willing and gunning for people's spots that are doing 30, 40, 50,000, and it's coming, and it's going to get ugly. And then it's just one little step, one little slip, and not to be scared and not to freak anybody out, but that's just the reality. And it's in every profession. And so there you go. But anyway, we've been speaking for a while, almost an hour and 20 minutes, and I do want to give both of you a chance to promote yourself. So where could people bother you, find you, back this project, social media, all that good stuff? Because obviously, even if this thing doesn't make it, that doesn't mean another project won't. And it's extremely important to follow people on social media.
For sure. Like I said, I'm staying positive. We had 10, 11 days left. It's going to make it. So if you want to back our project, How to Build an Army is on Kickstarter right now. You can search How to Build an Army, or if you go to howtobuildanarmy.lakeshorecomics.com, that will take you directly to the Kickstarter. That's howtobuildanarmy.lakeshorecomics.com. And then you can find me, or you can find us on facebook.com/lakeshorecomics. You can find me at Dave Steinborn on Instagram and Twitter. We also have some Lakeshore Comics pages on Instagram and Twitter. It's at Lakeshore Comics on Instagram and at Lakeshore Comic without the S on Twitter. And Eiler, go ahead. Where can we find you?
Right. You could find me on Facebook at Art of Eiler, and on Instagram it's Eiler Art 00.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna keep saying it. You have to support what you like and what you want to see made get more of. And so what that means is when people have comics that are either in on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or crowdfunder or wherever else they're going to be, you need to actually back those projects. Furthermore, you need to follow people on social media. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook pages. Also, you need to sign up for people's email lists. You also need to, when they go to cons, buy their books. If it's in a shop or they have a Shopify store or any type of store, that's important. You need to back it there or and pick it up if you didn't get it on the Kickstarter, or any other merch they have. It's a big deal. And all that goes a long, long way. Obviously everybody's at a different economic level, but following somebody on Twitter is a big deal and it makes a huge difference. So that can be a game changer. And then sharing it out makes a huge difference too. So I'm encourage you to do all of that because without any of that, things don't get made and they don't get exposure. So that's very important. And then as far as I'm concerned, obviously all my social media is slightly covered right now. But it's Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook, it's Pop Anime Comics on YouTube. If you don't want to miss any of my interviews, do 130 to 160 a year. And I have an interview for everybody. You name it, I've interviewed it. So if you don't want to miss any interview or you want to go back in the last 3 years, which will bring you about 500 interviews, voice actors, cosplayers, wrestlers, comic people, both mainstream, indie. It's all free and it's all up there. So you could have a fun time going through all that. And I promise you might not like all my interviews, but you will be entertained. So you can check that out. I also have a t-shirt that's making fun of Gundam and Taco Bell. Yes, it is a really cool t-shirt. It is available in 16 different colors on Redbubble. And then I also have Buy Me a Coffee because I am an independent media. So I do appreciate when people support independent media because that is a big thing. And well, if you like independent media, you got to support that too. And the best way to do that is either through Buy Me a Coffee or actually share out my interviews. That matters. So really appreciate all of that. And that's everything I have. And I don't know who wants the final word. I'll let you two figure it out before we wrap up.
So one other thing that I forgot to share, if you do want to get, you mentioned email list. If you do want to get on email lists, it is subscribe.lakeshorecomics.com, and that's how you can sign up for the email list. By signing up for the email list, you will get a free digital copy of Broken Trident #1 and a free digital ashcan preview of How to Build an Army. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I thank you everybody for supporting us, and thank you, Andrew, for having us on the show.
Well, on that note, I don't think I could have said that any better myself, and that is a wrap, everybody.